Welcome. Today we're joined by Shiona of Niven Condo Management. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, we're here to talk about the future of condo management. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and about how you see that.
Yeah, that's a loaded question, Thomas. So I've been working in the condo field for not very long. This is actually a third career for me. Um, and I've been in the field, started around about the start of COVID. It's funny how, our lives now are centered before pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Mhm.
But I went into condo management. Have a big, long background in customer service, hotel management, community service. And the thing that struck me the most was how overwork, underpaid condo managers were, and that their caseloads were unmanageable, in my opinion. Um, and it just sort of forced me to start thinking about what could we be doing differently to service the corporations that we service and service them well for the amount of money that they're paying managers. How much I just felt like they needed to get more out of what they were paying. And as a condo manager managing multiple units, I wasn't able to manage them as well as I would want or as well as I would expect if I was an owner of a condo. So I kind of,
Yes.
that's how I ended up going out on my own, and sort of creating my own little corner where my philosophy is, small portfolios so that I can manage the properties I'm managing and manage them well.
That makes a lot of sense. And we have talked to managers who, in some cases, are managing 10, 15, even 20 or more communities. And when you get up to that level, you just cannot give them enough time of day, let alone manage their meetings or help them with the issues that are really impactful to them. So we've all seen some of that pressure. And at the same time, you know that we're limited in terms of the number of managers that there are serving the industry today. And what feels like very self-imposed limits on what management fees are. How do low fees impact the ability for firms and managers to deliver service?
And again, I think it depends on, each corporation, as we know, just like humans, are different. There's a lot of similarities, but each corporation
Yeah.
is different. So you could have a small, community of, 50 townhomes and think, oh, it's going to be easy enough. Like there's not going to be a lot going on. When then all of a sudden they have, major leak roofs, like roofs are leaking, or there's major plumbing issues or sewage issues, or, any number of things. And then all of a sudden you have this one corporation where you think, oh, yeah, I can take that on. It's not, it's 50 units. They're pretty well run. There's not a lot going on. Great. And then all of a sudden it's eating up the majority of your manager's time
Yeah.
because you have to deal with the emergencies as they arise. Well, if you have three properties that all of a sudden are in the same boat and they're requiring, a good chunk of the manager's time, how is that manager then going to be able to address and do the daily functions of the other 5, 7, 10 properties that they're having to manage? There's just no, you can't do it.
You can't. I've often said, and I came from financial services and investment banking. People think that's a hard job. It is. You work long hours, but I could not really imagine myself in the role of a property manager.
Yeah. And each day is different. So, and that piece, that probably is what draws a lot of people into the
Yeah.
field is that
So
every day is different. You may wake up one morning and go, okay, so today I'm going to hit the emails and get all those done. And then I'm going to move over to this property and I'm going to get whatever report done that needs to get done. And then I'm going to jump over to this one and take care of X, Y, and Z. When you come into the office and all of a sudden there's these urgent, frantic emails from a unit owner that there's water coming through their ceiling from the unit above, well, then everything else stops.
yeah.
And then you're hyper focused on dealing with that. So something that you put off yesterday, going, okay, no, I can help, but I can respond to that email tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's now here and you're hitting the ground running because you're dealing with an emergency. And then, the next day you're like, okay, got to get to that email, but then something else happens, right? And so it's a cycle where managers are constantly in a reactive state of managing.
Yeah.
And that you can't go forward being reactive all the time because you're constantly going to be dealing with issue on top of issue on top of issue.
Absolutely. So that feels like a broken model. You really want to see your managers being more proactive. There's clearly some sort of a disconnect between what's happening for most communities and the ideal or your optimal vision of it. What is broken and how do you fix it?
Well, I think right now the demand for qualified licensed condo managers far exceeds the supply of the same, right? Um, so condo firms are kind of being forced to take on more corporations and what they can handle because they
Right.
don't want to leave a corporation high and dry, right?
Yeah.
Corporations, especially the large, need to have a manager in place. There's too many
Absolutely.
governance practices, too many things going on that you can't just have a volunteer board member manage a property. Um,
Absolutely.
so the supply of qualified managers is way lower than what the demand is. Um, so then those managers are then having to take on more properties. And again, we just discussed, you take on more properties, you can't service them to the level, I guess, to the expectation for what they're paying that they
Yeah.
should be receiving that level of service. So I think that's the biggest issue right now is that the supply is way smaller than what the demand is. And then what's happening, it's not a matter of um, getting, managers. I mean, I see all over LinkedIn, people are like, okay, I finished my next course and I finished my next course. And, I'm now a limited licensee and now I've got my full GL. So they're coming through. Like it's definitely, um,
Yeah.
people are, paying for the courses, they're doing the work, they're jumping into the field. But what's happening is they're burning out
Yeah.
at super fast levels, right? So then you have these
Yeah,
people who've
many of
gone
them leave
through,
within 2 years.
yeah,
That's, having gone through education that takes a significant amount of time to then exit
yeah,
after such a short stint is really unfortunate.
yeah. Well, in Ontario, and I don't know what it's like in BC, but in
Mhm.
Ontario, you have to take, I believe it's 5 college courses, and then you have to have 2 years of supervisory experience. So you have to have a supervisor checking everything, walking you through everything for 2 years before you can before you can become fully licensed.
Yeah.
But even while
I really don't
they're
like the terminology though, like limited licensee, it
yeah,
sounds so derogatory. Like, can't they
yeah,
have something
it's
that
just,
elevates those that have more instead of,
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I'm going on a tangent. Now, you said something there that makes me think that fees should be higher. There's a limited supply. You look at supply and demand, it means the prices should be higher. They're not. I mean, condo fees are higher in Ontario than they are in BC, even though the buildings are bigger and there should be economies of scale. So Ontario is charging a more reasonable amount for the services than those are in British Columbia, but they're still low.
yeah. And I don't I think if you have proper processes in place
Yeah,
and you have um the ability to have a smaller portfolio, then what's being charged in Ontario is fine. But you're
right.
right. I mean, supply and demand, right? So, yes, technically, when you look at it from a money perspective and supply and demand, if the demand is high and the supply is low, then you can charge more for your fees.
Mhm.
Business
Is it
owners, number
is
one,
it the value is it the value piece that's missing? It's like price is what you pay and value is what you get, and I say that a lot on various episodes, but I if the prices are fair, but the service isn't there because the managers are stretched too thin, then is that the reason that the prices are where they are? I'm struggling to understand it because to me, when I look at it, I think that management fees should be higher. I think what managers earn should be higher.
I agree with your statement about managers should receive more compensation for the work that they do. When you look at it, they're dealing with multi-million-dollar properties, right? Like they're responsible for so many different things. Um, I already think that the fees, I think that they're fair. I honestly, I don't, I wouldn't feel comfortable charging more. But again, I'm also just a little guy over here on my own. Um, but
Right.
I also know value for your service, right? And I think that um, what they're paying, if they have a manager who has a smaller portfolio, it should be fine because it should be fine.
Should be fine. Okay, good. It is
Would
definitely
you-
lower in BC, and they manage more buildings, so it feels even more disconnected here. The fees here are closer to $30 a door than 40 or so in Ontario. Is that a broad, fair number for the industry? I don't know, but
I think, yeah, I think in Waterloo, Wellington, so this, southwestern Ontario, I guess, the fees are generally around 28 to 32 a door
okay,
per month.
yeah, that's
So
quite similar to BC.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not astronomical.
Mhm.
Um, and when you think about it, if you have a building that's 500 units and they're paying, $30 a door a month, that's a big chunk of your management. Like
Yeah, that's very significant.
that's, I'm not the math person, but I think it's somewhere around 170,000 a year or something like that. I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
But you're right. Those are significant. And buildings that are bigger obviously still have very similar overall functions to the smaller communities. It's not a linear relationship between the number of doors and the amount of work.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount that needs to be done in any community, whether they're 30 units, 80 units, 200 units, or 500 units.
Yeah.
So, there's certainly an issue in dealing with the volume of owners, the amount of communication that you have to do, and there are some amenities that are likely to be there in the big buildings that might not exist in smaller ones, but
Yeah.
it's not a linear relationship.
No.
So that's a good point.
You look at the
Uh,
age too, right? The age of
yeah,
properties, right? You deal with a property that's, 50 years old who hasn't had any preventative maintenance done. It's falling apart. And the cost to maintain it, never mind replace what needs to be replacing, is astronomical.
yeah,
Um, right. And I struggle with, so just back to the management fee part, I struggle with, especially properties like that, right? So they're already paying so much
yeah,
for all of their contracts, for all of their, day-to-day operations of the building. And it's almost, a slap in the face to say, okay, so now you're going to pay even more in management fees because, the demand far exceeds the supply of managers. So we can charge you an exorbitant amount of money to manage your
mhm.
building because we can, right? And I
Yeah.
struggle with that. I mean,
I mean, it hasn't happened really. The prices have not moved dramatically.
yeah,
They're not going up much higher. There are different dynamics in different communities across the country, but generally they're not moving as much as the rest of inflation. And obviously, that's great if you're an owner in a condo community. So you are getting that service. But we're here to talk a little bit about the model change and what you think has to shift in the industry. What's your perspective on that?
technology is the biggest thing that's sort of lead the way in condo management. We're already seeing it. There are so many programs right now. You've got ones that, handle your capital projects. You've got ones that, do your minutes for you. There's so many different aspects out there right now with AI that are helping managers on their day-to-day stuff. Um, so I think that's going to play a huge role in changing things and how we work in the condo management field.
Yeah.
Um, if you think about it, I think, was it late 60s was the first condo I know in Ontario, I think. So
Mhm.
somewhere around there. So you think back that far, how much it's changed. You know, condos first started, like the boards were going knocking door to door. They were like
Yeah.
giving handwritten notes, you know, to each, you know, owner. Um, Everything was done manually, right? You didn't have a computer, you didn't have, you know, like cell phones and stuff, right? And so
Yeah.
it's gradually, you know, helped, but that's great. But what happens if we do find these programs, technology that's going to help transform condo management? We're probably still going to be in the same predicament of supply and demand. Um, so I'm not. I think
I
technology, I
think
think, is really where we're heading, um, to sort of revolutionize condo management and help with how things are managed now.
absolutely. I think that it's great for things like, easy communication, quick questions on bylaws, quick questions on issues can be resolved much faster now thanks to that
Yeah,
technology because it can be specifically restricted to the applicable provincial and then unit level building bylaws and rules and declarations. So all of those things can be fed in, and it can give you a pretty precise answer pretty quickly. And
yeah,
anything that can be used to speed up what normally would take a long time, I think will be very helpful and allow the manager to focus on the high impact exercises, the things that actually drive, communities forward
yeah,
and ensure that they're planning proactively and not being as reactive, as you
yeah.
said earlier.
But I think it also then allows managers to have that personal touch, right? To be able to take that time to talk to the sweet old lady who lives in unit, you know, 1201, who, you know, doesn't really have a major issue, but she just needs to know that she's being heard,
True.
right? And it sounds so simple, but when you're managing way too many units, you don't have the capacity to stop and have that kind of, and that's the stuff that feeds your soul. That's the stuff that, you know, I love doing, but I know that it's also beneficial to the person on the other side. You know, they just want to be heard. They want to know that
Yes.
you're, you know, and so I just think that, you know, I would love to be able to hand off a whole bunch of the stuff, like the, you know, all of the forms that we have to fill out, and, you know, and make sure we get those in on time, and doing all of those, the
Yeah.
governance piece, um, and be able to spend time building relationships with people in the community, I think speaks volumes. And it
Yes.
and then I'll always have a job because they'll be like, okay, that one, I like that one. She listens and she gets things done and she takes the time, right? So, um, yeah, I think that's that's what needs to change, right? Give us the technology to help us do a lot of the background stuff so that we have the capacity to deal with those major projects, deal with, you know, um, and for me, and so this kind of ties into that. One of the corporations that I'm managing now, I just took over in January,
Right.
84 unit complex,
Mm.
townhomes. Um, and their year end was end of January. So I started January 1st and then February. So they hadn't even had their budget done yet. So I quick got their budget done. You know, I'm looking at their waste collection. I'm thinking, why are you guys so over budget on your
Right.
waste collection? Like, this is crazy. I'm looking at, like, what's happening? And so
Right.
what had happened was they were having some issues with, people just dumping things beside the Molochs. Um, and
Yeah.
so then they were having to pay somebody to come and remove the, like, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, so they decided, okay, well, we're going to do garbage pickup. We're going to change from once a week to twice a week.
Right.
So now we're doubling their waste collection. And I was like, okay. But I'm like, is it really necessary? It's 84 units.
Right.
So I talked to some of the residents, I talked to the board, I called the vendor and said, okay, so I'm hearing that maybe the second pickup a week isn't really necessary. And they're like, well, no, we haven't heard anything. Well, it turns out they weren't even the ones doing the work. They were subcontracting to somebody else. So, and then I realized they had upped their rates, and I wasn't made like I didn't know because they upped it, and it just didn't transfer over from the other firm to me.
Right.
So whatever. So back and forth, I said, "Is there any wiggle room in this contract? Because this is way too much for this board to be paying."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, no, there's no wiggle room. We're sorry." And I'm like, "Okay, well, just to be fair, I'm letting you know I will be sourcing to see if there's anybody else who can do it for them cheaper."
Yeah.
So one of the places that I called was the one place that this one was subcontracting to. And they're like, "Well, Shiona, this is a little uncomfortable. Like, they subcontract us." I'm like, "Hey, look, I've been upfront and honest with them. I've already told them that I'm going to be looking for other quotes." And they're like, "Okay." So they gave me a quote, very similar termination terms and all of that stuff. So I'm like, "Okay." Went back to the other one and just said, "Hey, can you match or beat this amount?" They're like, "Absolutely not." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Switched it down to once a week. So now not only are they saving like $2,600 a month from getting rid of one extra pickup,
Yeah.
but then their rates were lower
Amazing.
for the one pickup a week. So saving them about $30,000 a year. I don't have that capacity when I'm managing 10 to 20 corporations. I
Exactly.
don't have the ability to be able to sit down and go, "Okay, let me look at this big picture. What do we got here and what can we do?" Right? So I was able to sit down, and I did it with all of their
Yeah.
contracts, right?
Yeah.
But when I was managing way too many properties, I couldn't do that.
I'm smiling like a Cheshire cat because I'm getting into the procurement space to try and help. That's so funny. Okay. Wonderful. Yes, but that is a case study. And let me tell you that with this country having, technically over 60,000, practically 25, 30,000 significant condo buildings across the country of size, the opportunity for savings for these communities at scale is enormous. So, um, it is fantastic that you're able to differentiate yourself by investigating and exploring and adding that value to the communities that you're serving that they wouldn't receive if you had a massive portfolio. So I think that's a
Yeah,
real
and that's what's happened.
advantage of working
Yeah.
with a firm that's going to give them a better manager to buildings ratio. I mean, we know that some managers are managing 10, 15, 20 buildings. At Niven, what is your optimal? What is the goal?
So for me, I mean, 400 units would be fantastic. My cap when I do all of my numbers is a maximum of 500 units and no more than 4 or 5 corporations
Wow. Okay.
within that
So
500
like a
units.
third or a quarter of what it might be common out
Yeah,
there on the street.
yeah. And it's manageable. And, who knows? In a couple of years, maybe even in 6 months, we don't know. There could be technology out there that would make it so I could do more and still do it as well as I'm doing it.
So technology is going to be a
Um,
big impact, obviously. It's always incremental, right?
100%.
There's all sorts of fancy shiny objects and some of them people play with and they like and they stick with and other ones don't stick around. I think that technology is going to make the job easier. It is going to allow a manager to do more and to focus on those higher value opportunities and tasks. So I'm glad that you've pointed out some of those tools can help. How else do you attract good people to the industry?
I can't even answer
Yeah.
that question.
Yeah, it is it's a broad one,
It's just
because,
a paycheck, right?
the challenge of burnout exists because they are overwhelmed. They aren't given the proper tools and systems. They're not given the enough training. Some firms are outstanding, other firms not so much, but they're not feeling like they're getting the level of attention that they need. And I think some of them are also just exposed to other things that make them want to go in a different direction. I see a lot of property
Yeah,
managers that end up working for vendors, which is
yeah.
an interesting shift. Why do you think that happens?
I think, again, part of being in this field, like we're dealing with, we're dealing with owners, we're dealing with vendors, we're dealing with engineers and lawyers and, all sorts of people. And once you start building those relationships and they see how you work, how you communicate with them, and they're looking for somebody who they, who has to, a bonus would be having experience in the condo field
Yeah,
because they primarily do most of their business working within condos. So it's kind of a win-win, right? You get somebody who knows this side of the system and now they're working over here, right? It's a perfect relationship.
absolutely.
And if you're working over here and not working in the condo management side, you're probably not on call 24/7, right? And you're
So
probably
there are
not
some
getting yelled at
lifestyle.
quite as much as you
Yeah,
normally would,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I
right?
suppose depending on the
And I think
capacity as
family,
well, it could be a lucrative shift if you're like transitioning to
yep,
sales for a vendor. You conceivably could make more than you do as
yep.
a certainly as
And
a
I
junior
think,
manager that's working their way through the ranks.
yeah. And I think though, if you're getting a lot of the younger people coming up through the ranks to be in condo management, and then they start having families,
Yeah,
and then they start missing their kid's soccer game because they're dealing with a flood at one of their buildings and they're on, so they have to deal with it, right? Like, so, and I think that would have an impact as well.
yeah.
Um, I'm far past out of that side of things, and I probably wouldn't have done very well when I was younger and raising my family, being in condoment for that reason alone, right? That constant, you're constantly on.
Well, a lot of the work that you did in your previous career contributed in evidence that higher level of emotional intelligence that I think lends itself to those that do persevere in this industry. They've got that
Yeah,
higher EQ. They're able to relate to people. They have the understanding of that aspect of things. And a lot of young people that come out of school, with a fresh license and not a lot of career experience, wouldn't necessarily come equipped with that.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
So your model lends itself to managers who have a bit of experience, maybe some even that are later career that are wanting a smaller portfolio than they've managed for many years. Is that something that you're seeing?
It's definitely part of the reason why I went out on my own, was thinking about, where I'm at in age wise, career wise, wanting to start to slow down a little bit. For me, 5, 7 years, it would be great if I could, slowly back out and then still have a team that's managing some properties. But the idea was, and it's my juices started flowing when I started to think about, those senior managers um, who are tired, they're exhausted, but they're not ready to retire, they're not ready to leave. Um, and started thinking, well, what if I did this and I had a smaller portfolio so they wouldn't be working, as many crazy intense hours. I mean, they'd still be putting the work in, but they wouldn't be as stressed, and it would be, a transition, from high pace,
Yeah.
high octane management to a little bit of slower pace to then eventually be able to, retire when they felt comfortable.
Right.
Um, I wouldn't discriminate against, hiring a limited licensee or just somebody who has me doing
Oh
it,
yeah, there's a
for
place for that for sure. But the model itself just sounds like it's well suited to somebody who's in that space, and that
yeah,
persona has it in their blood. They haven't burnt out and left after 2 years. They love what they do. They have that,
yeah,
comparing compassionate angle to their person,
yeah,
right? Like that seems like a really natural fit.
yeah. So we'll see where it goes. Right now, I'm a one man show. And yeah, I'll see once my portfolio is full. I will entertain taking on another senior manager and building their portfolio with them. Again, keeping it small. Um, sort of my philosophy when I decided to launch Niven Condo Management was, quality over quantity always.
Fantastic. I've
So
spoken with managers
yeah,
that have hundreds of buildings in their portfolio and managers that have just a handful, and it's really great to speak to someone that's at this point building something from scratch, because this is a
Yeah.
different perspective than what we often get to hear. And I guess you say you're a one woman show. Um, how do you do it? Do you have some support there? How do you make it all function?
I think it comes from, years of being in the workforce,
Hmm.
my lifelong learning. I started after my first degree. I did an English Lit, a BA in English Lit, just because more so I did that to prove that I could go to university and and get a degree, because back then, our guidance counselors weren't so
Right.
kind. Um, so I did that, but then I started working in hotels, and I remember I started working as a hotel switchboard operator in a hotel in downtown Toronto, and very quickly, I moved up through those ranks till I was, managing the front office, managing reservations, sales coordinator, um, and then I went into having kids, and then started working in the developmental sector, where I did for over 20 years. And while doing that, went back to school for a diploma in business admin. And then, started COVID, did my property management certificate, and then did my condo management. So I think I have, it's that lifelong just doing stuff, and also, just being used to just having to do things on my own, and
Uh,
learning things as I go. And I could not be doing half the stuff I'm doing with it. And I'm talking just on the tech side of things. Like
yes,
yesterday, I was
absolutely.
dealing with my email. For some reason, a setting had changed, and I wasn't able to send the minutes to the board. And I'm like, and why does it keep bouncing back? So I just consulted AI. And yes, it took me probably 2 hours to work through it, but I never would have been able to
But
do
you
that.
did it, and you didn't have a tech person,
Did do
so
it.
isn't
And
that
I did
amazing?
try.
I I was hearing as you were speaking a sort of thread of hospitality and service throughout your career.
Yeah.
So clearly, that angle is very strong. You must have a method both to handle some of the systems. So you've got good systems and tools. You also obviously have some accounting support to help manage all of the payments.
Yeah. I mean, the joy about being a condo manager, right? We know a little about a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
I know my capacity,
Mhm.
accounting, not my strong suit. I can do a mean budget. I can do a mean budget. I can read the financials. I can tell you where the issues lie, why they're there. But all of the other background stuff to get me to that financial report, I don't even want to think about it. I don't want to do
Right.
it. Could I do it? Absolutely. I know I could. Don't want
Right.
to. And so, yeah, so I do have accounting support that I use. She is phenomenal. And then
Excellent.
I use, platforms that are available for database stuff to keep everybody sort of everything in one place. Um, and I think just the years of, you know, like I said earlier, I don't know if we were on when we said this, but my training at the first firm I was at was phenomenal. They were next to, like, they were just fantastic. And I wouldn't be the type of manager I am today if it weren't for the training that I received there. They were
Let's
phenomenal.
give them a shout out.
Shout out to Five Rivers out of
Wonderful to hear that.
Wellington in Guelph, Ontario.
Good.
Fantastic.
No, I mean, you love to hear some stories like that. Somebody who gets good training and good support sticks around in the industry,
Yeah,
and that obviously has a good impact for everyone that's in it.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
huge, and I'm glad
Yeah,
that you
and,
got that.
I'm
You've got the
connected
confidence to
too.
do it.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
connected with CCI, CMRAO, ACMO, like all of the acronyms,
Yes,
and
all the acronyms.
and starting to volunteer through that as well. My previous life, I sat on a lot of boards,
Mhm.
and so just trying to get my foot in the door with any of the condo governance places. It's important, right? It's important. Education is important. Outreach is important, and building the community is
Couldn't
important
agree
too.
more.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. Shiona, is there anything specific that we should cover today that we haven't yet?
It is Mental Health Month.
It is.
We've talked about
Yes.
burnout a lot. And I think it's important, not just for colleagues, but for anybody in the industry, and that includes owners.
Mhm.
Um, just remembering that on the other end of that phone, there's a human being, right? Doing their best. They have a life outside of being a condo manager. They're not supposed to be at your beck and call 24/7. And just remember that, they're a person too. Um, Speak with kindness
Yeah.
always. Um,
It's a
yeah,
very important point, and I know it's a very you work in one of the most emotional fields. A person's home is deeply meaningful to them, and when something is affecting them, whether it be a neighbor, a noise, a crisis, or anything else, it is a highly emotional issue. And in many communities, because you're working with a manager that has a big portfolio, they may have said something, it just didn't rank high enough on the priority to get the response that that person felt was merited,
yeah,
and so they're on edge when they reach out. And
yeah,
I think it is helpful for them to understand that managers do have a huge amount on their plates, and managers on the whole do an exceptional job at taking the brunt of a lot of that communication.
yeah. And it's hard not taking it home. Luckily for me, and my past has helped me exponentially with that, is letting it go, right? I know 99% of the time if somebody's calling me and they're heightened, if they're upset, if they're being a little bit rude, I know it's not really me.
Yeah.
It's the situation. It's compounded, right? I say often, people don't just freak out. It's layered, right? So
It's layered, and none of us know what's going on in somebody else's life, and
yeah,
so that is sometimes an unseen extra element beyond whatever issue they're calling you about.
yeah,
No, I'm really glad you mentioned that. It is something that clearly impacts so many. I've spoken to lots of managers, current and former, who have said flat out that, big meeting, angry ownership group, cried in the car after they walked
yeah,
out of the meeting.
yeah,
Like, this is something that does weigh very heavily on the individual managers in the industry. And it's one of the reasons why I feel they're underpaid. I think there's lots of other great reasons why they're underpaid. It's the number of hours they work, the fact that a lot of them feel on call. The meetings are often held in evenings, off hours. This is eating up a lot of their personal time. I think it's an exceptionally difficult job. And I think we should all respect those that have the professional designation to do it and choose to do it day in and day out.
yeah. And I think there's a lot of the owners that don't realize what goes into becoming a licensed manager,
Very true.
right? And I had one other thought,
Mhm.
and I've seen it quite often, right? Where, one corporation has a management firm that they're with, and they're not happy. The expectations, they're just too far off. Um, so I would normally say to somebody, well, then it's within your right. Ask for a different manager.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to leave that firm. Maybe just ask for another manager and see if that's any better. Because
Changing
sometimes,
firms is tough. There's a lot of kind of institutional knowledge, I like to call it, that of a
yeah,
community that lives there. And a drastic change like that is a big handover. You come in really cold. If you can preserve a bunch of the systems
yeah,
and maybe get a personality that better suits the community that you're in, that
yeah.
could be a big win.
I feel that
And
doesn't help me in my business and
no, I
getting
was going to say it's
right,
very nice of you to say that,
but
since you're
that's
the one
kind
that
of
would benefit most from
it's kind of
somebody that
who I
wants
am though,
change.
right? Like, don't upset the boat if the boat doesn't have to be upset, right? You can make
Right.
minor adjustments, and if that's still not working, then
Yeah.
100% go find somebody else who's going to give you the level of service that you expect.
Yeah.
But you're right, when you switch firms, a lot can get lost,
Yeah.
and it can be
Eh,
messy unless there's really good record keeping and communication. However, back to managing way too many corporations, a lot of managers don't have the time to manage the hard files or the computer files the way that they should, in a way that would be transferable to anybody else coming through, right? So, um, yeah, I always say talk to your manager first. If it's not working, see
Yeah.
if there's another manager, or maybe it's something so simple, right? And again, I know that this is help me in gathering um, clients, but that's how I operate in life, right? Like, I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it. If something's not working, communicate, have a conversation about it. I say that to my boards now. Listen,
Yeah.
is there anything, and I end every meeting, is there anything that I'm doing or not doing that you would like me to be doing differently? Is there something that you feel is missing? Talk to me. Let's
Yeah.
have a conversation about it, because I don't want people that, number one, I want to work with people who want to work with me.
Yeah.
Full stop. If it's not enjoyable, I don't want to work with you,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
because
yeah. I
like
mean,
that's not like it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. And I love what I do. I love it.
yeah,
And I love working with people. So
it's good.
yeah, if something's not broken, don't fix it. Have the hard conversations. Sometimes it's something so minor. I may be doing something and I think I'm great. They're gonna love this. And
Right.
then they're looking at it going, I don't even know how to read this. Like, what is this? Right. And it just a simple conversation to say, hey, Shiona, I don't have any value to this. Like, what are you trying to show us here? Right? You have a
Yeah. The what and
conversation
how
about it
you
and you're like, oh,
communicate can make a big difference.
yeah.
Yeah.
So communication is huge.
Well, now that you've told people not to switch, those
Please
that
switch.
feel like they do need a change, and look, there's lots of great reasons why a transition of manager might be the fix.
Yeah.
If there is a, just a personal or, professional misalignment between the way that somebody works or communicates, then that might be the fix. But if they are looking for a smaller firm that has, a much more personal approach. We've got a QR code on the screen now for Niven Condo Management. They should get in touch with you. We've heard it's your show. They reach out, they'll be hearing from you.
Well, yep,
Um,
directly from me. Yeah, and I'm a big supporter of building community and building relationships. And having a smaller portfolio allows me to build those relationships and manage a corporation well. And for me, that's one of the most important things, right? Biggest, so for most people, it's the biggest investment of your life. And so they should ensure that listens to them and gets things done and treats their property as if it was their own. So if you want
I
that,
love to hear
reach
it.
out to the QR code.
There we have it. Well, Shiona, thank you so much for joining me today, for talking through some of the things that are evolving in the property management space, and letting everyone know about what makes Niven different. Thank you again.